And welcome to our December holiday edition of Sports Highlights. Glad you're with us, coming up on our 30th anniversary in February of 2022. Sports Highlights airs on Mondays at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m., weekends at 9 a.m. on Cox Cable 47 517 and NPSTV.com, and all throughout social media and online on the web. Greg Bicoveris along with our great crew here. Our first guest today is Justin Lee, radio host at WTAR. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me today, Greg.
Very good. You grew up in Chesapeake. You went to Great Bridge and Norfolk State.
Yep, I played baseball at Great Bridge. That led me to Norfolk State University, where I played baseball there, earned a degree in the Bachelor of Science, Computer Science, and that led me to Sinclair.
I always give a lot of credit for those that play baseball in college, not just because of the grind of baseball, but the road trips and trying to do academics and athletics.
If nothing else, it really translates to the work life that we all see after we're done with sports. You hang up your cleats, but the things that you learn on the field, you translate them over to the workforce, and it's gone well so far.
You're with Sinclair Communications now. I worked there for 6 years, so I'm very familiar with that building right there in the heart of Norfolk.
That's right. Yep, right on the Elizabeth River. I have a show, Sports Insight 757 with Jay Lee on WTAR from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Saturday. And that's been great. You know, I brought in a ton of more voices, and it's led me to more opportunities.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the show. Sometimes there were some bumps along the way at the beginning, and now kind of like you are the main host.
Yeah, I got brought in by somebody that heard me talking sports around the office a lot, right? And then that translated to, you know, hey, do you want to do the show by yourself? Or are you able to work the board and operate everything and kind of make it work? And it took a few learning curves, a couple growing pains, but after that, everything was smooth sailing.
Very good. Well, let's get right to it. Your station, of course, carries the Washington football team. Yep. They did make the postseason last year at 7-10. We're in December now. The question is how they will evolve this month. This is a big month.
Well, it'll be tough for Dallas to kind of loosen up their grips on the top spot in the NFC East. It's a tough division, but this year, actually year after year, it's almost like, hey, is this the NFC East or the NFC least? So, it'll be interesting to see if Washington can climb out from the bottom.
Absolutely, and it's so important, too, that Washington is heard right here on WTAR AM 850 and 96.5, so it's a simulcast.
Yes, we love carrying the Washington football team. They're great partners with us, and we've done a lot of good from them, and they actually supply us with tickets that we're able to give out to our listeners, so it's been pretty mutual.
Very nice, very nice. Then, of course, you talk about the NFL in general, and we saw Washington earlier this year beat Tampa Bay, and it shows to you it's a week-to-week league.
Correct. I mean, they played them very tough last year to end the season last year, and then that kind of rolled over to this year. I think that confidence that they had playing them as close as they did to end the year, they took that over into this year and were able to beat them. Historic win.
And sometimes on your show, you've had recent Great Bridge guests as well. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I've had Briante Weber on. He played basketball at Great Bridge, went to VCU, and now he's played for a few NBA teams and overseas. I've had him on, and then, believe it or not, my sister, she's a decorated athlete at Great Bridge, and now she's coaching there as well. So it's been good to have that tie-in, that local tie-in, to show that we have athletes here that can compete at any level.
Absolutely. Let's talk to Justin Lee here, radio host at WTAR, hosts a show on Saturday mornings from 9 to 11. Glad he's with us here in the studio. And you talk about this area so rich of athletes. We mentioned, Iverson or Bruce Smith or Plaxico Burress, but both sides of the water. Chesapeake's known for their baseball players.
Yeah, it's been ever since I played baseball, it's always been competitive. I mean, year after year, even though they kind of watered down the divisions here, spreading more championships out amongst all the teams. It was funny, something that we would say at Great Bridge is, where are all the trophies over at Grassfield? And we're saying, oh, well, they're over at Great Bridge. So,
yeah.
The talent, the competitive nature of the Southeastern District, if you will, what I used to call it, it's been good for athletes, and it prepares them to play athletes from across the country.
Just like in high school football, we've done some games with Woodside taking on some of the Chesapeake schools like Grassfield. You remember that tremendous athlete, Hollowell, that played a few years ago.
Yeah, Grant, he's now a decorated Olympian. He's a medal Olympian, and he comes out of the areas, just like Grassfield. And, even his days playing football, the trajectory was the Olympics and track and field, so I'm glad he was able to achieve his goals.
Absolutely. Talking to Justin Lee, radio host at WTAR. Greg Bicoveris, glad you're with us. Any social media you want to plug?
You can check us out on Facebook and on Twitter at Sports Radio 96.5 FM, and then I have my show page on Sports Insight 757 with Jay Lee on Facebook. We post all of our content there. You can actually watch us live in the studio during the show via StreamYard. We post a link there. And it gives people a visual medium as opposed to just having to listen to us and go about their day.
Right. And when you talk about the different sports, it's just amazing the crop of talent. We mentioned baseball. We mentioned some of the guys from this area like Zimmerman, who played for the Nationals, or Wright, that played for the Mets.
Yep. Those guys are now done with their careers, but they're making sure they give back to the area. That's an important thing, is to take your platform and use it to continue to build up the sports in this area, to continue to drive interest for kids, to want to make it to that level as well.
Right, and we talk about radio and TV. It's so important. Like this show, when it first started off, it was just on regular cable channel 6, but now it's all about sharing it throughout platforms, whether it's radio or TV. One click, it can go anywhere.
Well, it's all about your reach. If the more reach you have, the more impressions you get. That's what is driving the media these days, is how many impressions, how many clicks, and as a result, things are having to cross platforms, right? Like you do something on radio, you do something on TV, they need to be able to find it online as well.
Right. This area's also had great NBA players like Smith, who went to Maury, and also Iverson, of course, who went to Bethel.
Even Cam Thomas these days, Matt Coleman, those are dudes from this area that are now playing for NBA teams, playing with the likes of Harrison Barnes, playing with Kevin Durant. It's amazing that these athletes are rubbing shoulders, learning so much from these top athletes that they probably dreamed of, one day playing with, and here they are.
What are your thoughts on the NBA season so far? It's early, but it's still evolving.
It's early, but the crazy thing about it is the competition is almost like we're in the playoffs sometimes. You see some teams like, the Detroit Pistons that aren't really competitive, but then in the same breath you have someone like the Golden State Warriors that are, top of the league without having Klay Thompson available. It's amazing that Steph Curry, Draymond, and some of the younger boys like Jordan Poole are able to kind of pull together and get the job done. I can only imagine what it's going to look like once they have Klay Thompson.
And the Nets have had their issues with Irving, but the Wizards are playing very well.
The Wizards are playing well. Even without Bradley Beal, sometimes they're able to get the job done. That's something that you wouldn't be able to say about them in years past. They're able to gel together, and I think that's something that Bradley Beal might have learned from Michael Jordan, right? Because you saw Michael Jordan trying to be the one guy, trying to be the scoring champion every year, but that wasn't winning him championships. Now Beal is having to evolve his game, get his other teammates involved, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, the Lakers have LeBron, who's pushing 40 in a few years, and they still need him because anytime he's out, it seems like they crumble.
Right. It's going to be a transition, right? LeBron was the guy. Even when he came over to Miami, D. Wade took a step back and said, LeBron, you're going to be the guy. Now, almost that same transition is happening. LeBron's almost going to have to take a back seat at times, get some rest in, and say, hey, Anthony Davis, I'm putting it on you. You lead the guys while I'm, healing, getting ready for the playoffs, things like that.
Right. We're talking to Justin Lee, radio host at WTR. Greg Pickaveris, glad you're with us at Greg Pick on Twitter. Talking to a radio host who hosts your show.
Sports Insight 757 with Jay Lee. And I've had you on several times. You seem to do a lot with the media. What else do you have going on?
I'm involved in a lot of things, that's for sure. Keep the plate full.
Yeah. Well, what about the television network as far as you covering the Washington football team?
Yeah, I work for Fox and CBS at sporting events, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Not always easy getting up there, but we make the most out of it.
I can tell you one thing, it's good having you on the show from time to time because you're able to shed that insight on how it is in person, right? How the media is interacting with the players, the coaches, what the feel is. That's something that a stat sheet just can't provide you.
No. And this year there's fans in the stadium, too. Last year was like a library atmosphere. Yeah. So fans bring a lot to it as well.
And that's what kind of gives you an early playoff feel. In football, though, we now have an extra game during the season. So this is something that the fans are going to have to get used to. And even the players are, they get to one point in the season, they're like, all right, I'm halfway through, but no, now you got an extra game poured on top of that.
Right. Now, you guys have carried Virginia Tech on the stations as well as Virginia. Virginia Tech has definitely struggled this year. A coaching change for 2022.
Yes, Coach Fuentes made a decision to, along with the program, that he was no longer the guy in the position to continue to propel the Hokies towards success, towards another bowl. And a mutual agreement had come to terms, and he decided to leave mid-season. It was kind of a shock to some people, but if you look all over social media, people were calling for his job. They knew he was on the hot seat. You lose at home like that, it doesn't bode well for you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of making changes in the middle of the season or toward the end of the season because it wasn't like they had a losing record. They were
Right.
500, and of course they had a few games left. They could have still gone to a bowl, but I guess it shows you how big college sports is big business.
Results matter, and especially at home. If you're losing in front of your own fans while Enter Sandman is one playing over your heads, that is not going to sit well. It's going to make a loss look twice as bad in any given day.
Because generally Saturdays are there for recruits, and then it affects sponsors, advertising, attendance. It trickle-down effect TV and so forth.
And then furthermore, sponsorships.
Exactly. Yeah, it affects everything. So when you win, and Virginia too, they're winning this year. They didn't look good against BYU, but they never drew as well as Tech did anyway. But the pressure wasn't on Virginia as much this year as it was on Tech.
Correct, and that's why I think they're able to play with a little bit more freedom outside of missing Brendan Armstrong for a few games. That's going to take a big blow for Virginia. They're going to have to find a way to overcome that, but nothing like what Virginia Tech is having to overcome, losing how many games they are at home, losing their head coach midseason. It's a different uphill battle.
Right. Talking to Justin Lee, radio host at WTAR AM 850 96.5 on the FM dial, and you got to love that TuneIn app. You can hear so many shows on TuneIn as well.
Absolutely, and you can also, I can't stress it enough, like being able to see us in the studio, follow us on Facebook, Sports Insights 757 with Jay Lee. We give away a ton of tickets on there as well, but you're able to kind of see how we interact in the studio, and that's something that is growing on me. I wasn't a fan of it at first, but now that we're kind of getting into it, I like having people comment on the StreamYard post while we're, mid-show, and we read those comments aloud on air.
And as soon as I got off the air with you recently, I had a caller call me and say, do y'all show any love to the private schools? I'm saying, yeah, private schools count too, and they've had a good tradition over the years as well.
Absolutely. Growing up in my days playing baseball, travel ball, if you will, Gary Lavelle over at Greenbrier Christian. I think he's over at Bryan and Stratton College now, but back then he was at a private school, Greenbrier Christian, and I got a lot of instruction from him, and he has a decorated, baseball coach career over at Greenbrier Christian as well.
And about baseball, the scouts will find you no matter where you're at.
Yep.
Especially now.
Yeah. And social media is actually making that more available too. Things like COVID kind of shut that down. You weren't traveling as much. Scouts weren't traveling to you, but now you're able to kind of put that out there on social media, some of these bigger platforms that are trying to push kids to the next level.
All right, leave us with a parting shot.
If you want to catch my show, you can call in anytime. Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Sports Radio 96.5 FM and 850 a.m. We have a lot of fun, a lot of voices, a lot of opinions, and we want to hear from you.
All right. Give my best to your great staff over there at WNIS, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.
All right. That was Justin Lee, radio host at WTAR, local product through and through. Stay tuned for our next guest as we'll talk about pickleball, up-and-coming sport here in Hampton Roads. Sports Highlights rolls on.
You're watching NNPS TV. Catch sports highlights on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, and on Saturdays and Sundays at 9 a.m. Visit us online at nnpstv.com to view all your favorite episodes. NNPS TV, watching education happen.
And welcome back to part two of our second segment of Sports Highlights, our holiday December edition. Glad you're with us on our program here on NNPS TV. And for more, log on to nnpstv.com. Our next guest is Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News. And what that means, folks, that is pickleball. And good to see you.
Good to see you.
What a sport that is growing.
Oh, it's awesome sport. It's considered the fastest growing sport in the United States right now, and maybe even the world. it's growing everywhere, and Newport News and the peninsula is really growing too.
Right, we haven't had many pickleball guests, so you're definitely front and center here. You know, I play tennis. Tennis is always popular. It's on TV. There's Grand Slam tournaments for juniors and adults. Racquetball kind of hit its stride in the 80s. So pickleball uses like an actual wiffle ball almost. And talk about the equipment.
Yeah, well, we use a solid paddle. We call it a paddle instead of a racket. It's a composite. You can buy cheap ones that are made out of wood, or you can buy expensive ones just like in tennis. You can spend a lot of money. But the ball is just an old-fashioned wiffle ball. It's plastic, and there are actually indoor balls and outdoor balls. We play both indoors and outdoors. Outdoors, the holes are smaller, and so the wind doesn't affect the ball as much. And but they both basically meet the specifications by USA Pickleball Association for weight and diameter and bounce.
That's great. And you talk about the equipment. It's easy to carry.
Very easy to carry. It's not that expensive. And all you need is a bag and a couple balls and a paddle, and you're good to go.
All right, you got a magazine there too.
Yeah, this is the USA Pickleball Association official magazine. When I joined the USA Pickleball Association, once I started getting into it, you get the magazine. It comes every month. And it's just a fun thing. This particular issue happens to be the gear guide. So throughout the magazine, they have all the different types of paddles and balls and bags and clothes and everything.
Yeah, your shirt?
Yeah, I got this shirt when I joined the USA Pickleball Association. And very quickly, I realized how much fun pickleball was. And so I started learning about what's going on, and they have this program called being an ambassador. So I looked into it, and I went ahead and volunteered with the association. So the whole idea is I'm just an ambassador to promote the sport. It's a volunteer job. Just what I always talk about pickleball. I play pickleball all week long, and so it's just kind of taken over my life.
It's definitely, now that you're retired, probably a great release too as well.
It's awesome. And, you know, when you retire, my wife and I both started playing, and that's one of the fun things about pickleball is the guys and girls, husbands and wives, get together, and we have lots of fun, lots of laughing, and we play with, each game we switch around and play with different partners.
Well, let's talk about the scoring. In tennis, they play in sets, best 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5. How does the scoring work?
For pickleball, the games go to 11 points, and it's kind of like ping pong in that you each time, if your team is serving, and we normally play doubles, if your team is serving, then you can accumulate points. And as soon as your team loses a serve, then the other team starts serving, and they get points. Mm-hmm. We play to 11 normally, and sometimes in tournaments, they go to 15, but normally what we do is we play a game, which takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then depending on how many people are waiting to play, then all 4 might come out and 4 new people come in, or maybe the winners stay on the court and 2 new people come in, and that's how we normally play.
Great to be back in the studio talking to Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News, in our December holiday edition of Sports Highlights. Great crew on staff as well. And it seems like a very social sport. Is singles popular, or do they play singles and doubles, or just doubles?
Well, recreational-wise, we play doubles because it's easier. But if you're in really, really good shape, and usually kind of younger, you can play singles. Unlike tennis, if you're playing singles, you use a smaller portion of the court, and doubles, it expands, right? Well, for pickleball, it's just the same size court. So if you're playing singles, you're doing an awful lot of running around, and you better be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, there's strategy involved, too, right?
Oh, definitely. There's the lob shots, and there's in pickleball, the court, there's 2 lines 7 feet back from the net. And that area, 7 feet back from the net, is called the non-volley zone. And so you can't be in that 7 feet and hit a volley right out of the air. If the ball bounces over the net into the non-volley zone, you can step in or reach in, and you can knock it over. And we call that dinking. We dink the ball over the net. And so this ball does not bounce very high. Mm-hmm. So quite often, if you just dink it over the net, it doesn't bounce very high off the ground, so you can't smash it. You end up just dinking it back over the net. And so you get into some dinking wars until somebody hits it a little too high, and then you can smash it and win the point.
And you have to be in shape. I mean, like in tennis, we call those the drop shots. Or there's a lot of strategy involved, like we talked about as we're talking to Dave Hawes. And, it's something for young and old, and for men and women both, and for youth.
Definitely. In fact, my sons, they went to Hines Middle School in Menchville, and they remember playing pickleball in the wintertime during their little 2-week lifetime sports breaks indoors during the wintertime. And so they've played with us before. They're in their mid to late 20s now. They occasionally come out and play with us. And then we have 80-year-olds playing with us.
Yeah.
So it's across the whole spectrum.
Keeps the heart rate going, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you get older, you start talking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
As we're talking to Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News. Now, did you just pick this up, or did you play sports when you were younger to kind of give you that hand-eye coordination?
Yeah, I remember playing tennis in high school and racquetball at the YMCA in the rooms, and of course I play golf, but pickleball is and ping pong. I love playing ping pong, so it's very similar to ping pong and tennis.
Absolutely. And you look at the racket, you talked about it earlier, called a paddle. Yeah. It looks like something from racquetball, but it's a totally different composite because racquetball, they have strings.
Strings, exactly. Yeah, this is, most of them are honeycomb inside. Some of them used to be metal. This game really was just developed back in the 60s on the West Coast. A father and his family, the kids, they were at their lake house in the summertime. And the father was trying to find something for the kids to do. So he had some ping pong paddles, and he had some wiffle balls. And so then he made a bigger paddle, bigger than ping pong, and had a badminton net they set up in the driveway at a lowered height. And the kids were out there playing. And over the summers, over many, many years, they developed this game and came up with some rules.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the surfaces, like how important is footwork, proper attire, and the surface you're playing on.
Yeah, so we play both indoors and outdoors. So indoor courts, usually it's on a basketball court. So you have the indoor wooden lacquered surface. And so there's certain good shoes, sneakers, to use on indoor basketball courts. And then if you play outdoors, it's a hard surface, and you use more like outdoor tennis shoes because the surface is different.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, very nice. So we're talking to Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News. And the sport's growing. What about other parts of the country? What are you hearing in other parts of the country? You grew up in Buffalo.
That's right. It's just growing everywhere. It started out in the West Coast and then spread, and it really took hold initially in retirement communities. Mm-hmm. If older people like to have fun, and it's easier. But the more it's growing, more and more younger people are playing the sport. In fact, the number one ranked player in the world right now is Ben Johns. Mm-hmm. And he's 22 years old. Wow. And he came from tennis, so he was a really good tennis player. But now he transitioned to pickleball, and it's amazing what's happening with the sport everywhere.
Now, what about professional circuit as far as tournaments and getting points and prize money? What are you hearing about how that's evolving?
Yeah, USA Pickleball has started, actually, the Professional Pickleball Association, the PPA. They have tournaments all over the United States. And then there's even this other Major League Pickleball that's started. It's more of a team format. They just had a tournament in, I think it was Texas. It was on TV. In fact, CBS Sports actually broadcast the final day a couple weeks ago. So it's starting to show up. And there's a channel on Fios that I've watched, and they actually show pickleball tournaments all over the country.
What type of advice would you give to somebody that wants to play pickleball?
Well, I'll tell you, probably the best thing to do is to, there's the Midtown Community Center where I play here on Newport News, and the Denby Community Center up on Warwick Boulevard. And they have instruction there that's available you can go check out. Those are places to play during the daytime. So if you want to play on the weekends, you have to start going out to some of the parks, Back Creek Park in York County, some of the communities.
But those are outdoors.
Yes, outdoors.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, in fact, we were just playing the other day, and it was down in the 40-degree range. And but as long as you wear the right clothes, wear layers, so as soon as you start playing, you start taking off layers, and you can play in the wintertime even. We play all winter long.
And of course it gets dark early, so be careful when you're out there playing no matter where you're at. Final few moments here with Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News. We talk about how racquetball and tennis have always been front and center with paddle sports, but pickleball really is up and coming. And like Dave said, young and old both play this. And when you talk about, the future of it, it just seems like it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And it's almost like very grassroots. It seems like people are picking it up and telling their friends, telling their neighbors from that standpoint of view, because it's not like you don't see it a whole lot on national TV or anything, but it's going to get there.
It is. It really is, because it's so much fun. And we're starting to get these professional players out there. They're starting to get endorsements. And the number of manufacturers of paddles and balls is just exploding. It used to be there's just a few, but now it's amazing.
Well, keep using that paddle and keep plugging away.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. That was Dave Hawes, USAPA Ambassador, City of Newport News, talking about the wonderful sport of pickleball. Great holiday idea to tell your friends and family during the holiday season to go out and play pickleball for the first time anywhere on the peninsula in Hampton Roads that can house this great sport and play indoors or outdoors. Dave, thank you again. So I want to thank our great guests for December, Justin Lee, and also Dave Hawes, for our great producer, Ray Price. Glad to be back in the studio after having sports highlights on the road. I'm Greg Bicaveras. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.